So I've seen a few YouTubers now doing their 2021 prediction videos for the Formula 1 season, and I thought I might as well hop on the bandwagon. It is my first video on this channel, so if you do enjoy, please like, subscribe, let me know anywhere I can improve down below. So in this we're going to be running through Drivers' Championship, Constructors' Championship, Flop of the Year, Driver of the Year, and maybe Race of the Year. So yeah, let's get into it.
Here we go.
So we're going to start off with the Drivers' Championship, and we're going to start off at the very bottom, P20. We're going to go with Nikita Mazepin. Now, a lot of controversial stuff has happened with Nikita this year. A few weeks ago, the social media clip, I don't need to go into detail, you've all seen it. He punched Callum Ilott last year. He hit the second place sign into Yuki Tsunoda this year in Belgium. So yeah, not a very likeable bloke, also a pay driver. But talking about his actual driving, came 5th in F2 last year. In the last weekend he could have won it if the results went certain ways, but it was very unlikely. He got 2 fastest laps, 6 podiums along with the 2 wins. So yeah, not too bad a driver maybe, but the defensive driving that he does is horrible. You've seen it in the last race in Bahrain. Got 10-second worth time penalties, 2 5-seconds for pushing people off the track. So driving, I don't think he'll be great, and also personality, don't like him. So yeah, I'm going to say P20 for him. Also, the Haas does not look good at all. I kind of feel bad for Mick Schumacher, but I do think Schumacher will outperform Mazepin without a doubt. But yeah, P20 Nikita Mazepin. Moving on to 19th, I'm going to say Nicholas Latifi. I think he will score a point this year. I think the Williams is getting better and better. And yeah, I do think Latifi will score a point. Now, obviously, he's a pay driver. His dad owns Sofina. I think his dad's worth $7.5 billion. But yeah, he's a pay driver, but his performances in F3 were very good. He was in F2 for a couple of years, didn't really do well at all. But I actually like the bloke. He's a pay driver, so that kind of puts people off him. But he seems like a nice bloke. Williams, YouTube and Instagram, they're very good on their socials. And yeah, he seems like a nice bloke. I'm going to say P19. Didn't have the best season, but it was his rookie season. So yeah, P19 for Nicholas Latifi. I think the Williams will be a better car this year. Will it be consistently in the points? Definitely not. But I think it'll be in the points now and then. Moving on to P18, we're going to talk about Mick Schumacher. So Michael Schumacher's son, I think everyone's delighted to have a Schumacher back in the sport, but it's going to be tough this year for Mick in the Haas car. I do think he'll get a couple of points, but consistently in the points I don't think so. Very good driver, F2 champion, 2 wins as well with Mazepin, but he got 10 podiums, so I think Schumacher will outperform Mazepin. I think he'll get more points than Mazepin and Latifi. Do I think he'll get in the points more than 3 times? No, the Haas does not look good at all. But driving wise, very good, and he's just a very likeable bloke. When he came together with Schwartzman in the British Grand Prix, he apologised over the radio to Schwartzman, who was his teammate. So he's a very likeable bloke. So I'll say P18 for Mick Schumacher. Moving on to P17, we're going to talk about George Russell now. Obviously, nowadays you just think of George in a Mercedes because of the Bahrain race or the Sakir race. He should have won it. In most people's eyes, he did win it. But unfortunately, Mercedes made a mare of the pit, putting on Bottas's tyres. And I think then he got a puncture. It just wasn't his day. He still got points. But I think this year, he's been in Q2 about 10 times. Very consistent driver. I'm going to say George Russell P17. I think he'll outperform his teammate. I think he'll outperform the 2 Haas cars. And I do think he will be at Mercedes in 2022. Moving on to P16, we're going to go with Kimi Räikkönen now. He is 41, getting on a good bit, but he still has speed and he shows speed. Do I think he'll outqualify his teammate? No. He will now and then. Their battle this year on track was very close. Giovinazzi and Räikkönen. I think it was one. Giovinazzi won it by 1 qualifying round, which came down to the wire in Abu Dhabi. So yeah, I'm going to say Kimi Räikkönen 16th. I think a lot of experience, still got a lot of speed, but does he have the want? We'll have to wait and see. And then just in front of Räikkönen, P15, we're going to go with his teammate Giovinazzi. What would the Alfa Romeo car be like next year? Ferrari are bringing improvements to their engine, which Alfa use. But no one really talks about Alfa. They're kind of the forgotten team. So I'm going to put Giovinazzi in front of Räikkönen. I think it'll be close. They both finished on 4 points this year. I do think Giovinazzi will edge it this year. He's 26. I like Giovinazzi, so I think hopefully Alfa have a good year this year, and I can see them doing well in 2022. I think they'll be the underdog in 2022. So yeah, P15 for Giovinazzi. Moving on to P14, we're going to go with Yuki Tsunoda, the rookie into F1. Finished 3rd in the F2 championships last year. Very nice bloke, comes across really sound. So I'm going to go P14. The AlphaTauri is a bit inconsistent, and as he's a rookie, he'll probably be tough to get used to the steering wheel, as he said in his interviews. So we'll have to see how it goes. It's going to be a tough year for the rookies or for people coming back to the sport, who we'll talk about next. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda P14, I hope he does better than that. I think he's a very good driver. I watched a lot of F2 this year, but we'll have to wait and see how he gets on. P13, we're going to go with Fernando Alonso. Now, this is a risky one. Alpine could be a very, very, very good team next year, but I do think Alonso will struggle. He's been out of the sport for 2 years now. He did compete in Le Mans and he won it twice. I think he won Le Mans. He also did Indy 500, but he failed to qualify. So he's done 2 of the Triple Crowns. Will he ever do 3? Probably, because it's Fernando Alonso. Great driver in his day, but I do think he's past his peak, and I don't think he'll be anywhere near as quick as he was. But we know Alonso is very competitive. It depends on his relationship with Alpine. Like, if that fades away in the first couple of months, few races, I think he'll just go downhill. But if he gets on well with them, I can see him improving. Maybe he will finish in the top 10 if he gets along well with Alpine. But it's just Fernando Alonso. He doesn't seem to get along well with the teams. We'll have to see how he does. First year back, yeah, P13 for Fernando Alonso. Hopefully he does better. I do like the bloke, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Moving into 12th, we're going to go with Pierre Gasly, the Monza winner. What a race that was. My race of the season. On his day, a very good driver. Kind of faded off throughout the back end of the season. Started off very strong. Obviously got that win in Monza. From then on, he had a couple of good races after that and just went downhill massively. So I don't think the AlphaTauri car is going to be too good next year. That's going to be my prediction. Hopefully it is. I like Gasly and I like Tsunoda, so I want them to do well, but I can't see them doing too well. So I'm going to go P12 for Gasly, but he is a very good driver on his day. Moving on to Lance Stroll. Now, we obviously got pole in Turkey, Stroll on pole. That was a very good day. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it in the race, but he did pull away with the lead. I think he had wing damage or something that caused tyre wear, something like that. So he probably would have won if it wasn't for that. Still had a good race. Very, very good quali from him though. Like, I think he got pole by 7/10 or something. So he does show pace. He shows promising signs. He's just not consistent enough. He is a paid driver, but I still like him. So I'm going to say P11 for Lance Stroll. I do think he'll have a good season, but I think Vettel will beat him in the Drivers' Championship. Moving on to P10, we're going to go with Esteban Ocon. He skipped a year of F1 2 years ago now, because there wasn't enough seats, so he took a year away, came back last season, performed quite well, had a slow start but really got into it. But I think next year he has a lot to play for. If he doesn't outperform Alonso, he won't have a seat in F1 probably for the rest of his life. I do like Ocon, got his first podium in the Sakhir Grand Prix, finishing second. I really do hope he outperforms Alonso, because I want Ocon to stay in F1, but I also want Alonso to do well. So I do think Ocon will beat Alonso, and I do think Ocon will finish 10th in the Drivers' Championship. Moving on to P9, we're going to go with Aston Martin's new driver, Sebastian Vettel. I do think he will outperform Stroll. I think on raw pace, Vettel is better, and on a race day, I do think Vettel is better. Obviously, had a very, very rough season at Ferrari. Got one podium, which was at the Turkish Grand Prix, just about getting it. Thanks to a Leclerc lock-up when he went for a move on Perez. What a race that was. But I do think Vettel will have a good season. Vettel only finished on 33 points, and one of them was a third place podium, so not a great season at all, but I do think he'll have a better season and finish P9 in the Drivers' Championship. Moving on to P8, we're going to go with Ferrari's newest driver, Carlos Sainz. Got in a bit of trouble in social media there over the last few days because of his dad's karting company, something ridiculous like that. I don't know why they're hating Carlos Sainz Jr. for it, but that doesn't matter. What a driver he is. I am a McLaren fan, as you can see by the caps and all. But I'm not going to be too biased. I do think he was very good last season. Very, very consistent. Had that crash at Sochi, which kind of got him down on confidence, but I think he recovered quite quick. So I do think Carlos Sainz will finish 8th. Obviously, going to a new car is tough, especially when it's a Ferrari, and a very slow Ferrari at that. They do have a new engine coming, but how good will it be? We won't know until we see it. Obviously, drag this year was a big issue for them, so we'll have to wait and see how Ferrari do, but I do think Sainz will finish 8th in the Drivers' Championship. And just ahead of him now in P7, we're going to go with Charles Leclerc. Got one podium last season in Austria, finishing 2nd thanks to Hamilton's penalties, Perez's penalties. He got past Perez but got 2nd because of Hamilton's penalty. What a race that was, Lando's podium. I'm going to go P7 for Leclerc. Great driver. That win at Monza in 2019 was one of the best wins for a Ferrari fan you've seen in your life. It was just such a good race, and the way Leclerc fought off Hamilton and Bottas for the whole 60 laps or whatever it was amazing. So Charles Leclerc P7. I think he'll beat Sainz only because he knows what a Ferrari is like, but I think in a couple of years that'll be very close. No first driver in Ferrari this year. It's going to be based on performances each week, so that'll be interesting to see. Moving into P6, we're going to go with Daniel Ricciardo, the new McLaren driver, one of the best drivers on the grid. 31 now, so he's getting on a bit, but he's probably got 10 years left in him. What a driver though, constantly performs, but I think he struggles getting used to new cars, as you saw with the Renault last year. Took him about 10 races to get used to the brakes, the throttle. So we'll have to wait and see how he does with McLaren. Obviously McLaren with the new Mercedes power unit, that'll be very interesting to see. But yeah, it depends how quick Daniel Ricciardo will adjust to the McLaren. I think there's going to be less testing days this year, so he's going to struggle with that, like Sainz and a lot of the drivers. But I do think he'll have a great season and finish 6th in the Drivers' Championship. Moving on to 5th, we're going to go with Sergio Perez, or Checo Perez. He won his first race in 190 race entries at the Sakir Grand Prix last year, and what a race that was. Very, very consistent driver. I'd say the most consistent driver on the grid, either him, Sainz or Hamilton. But yeah, I'm going to go Perez 5th, mainly because the Red Bull is very hard to handle. I think in a year or two, probably 4th, maybe 3rd. But the Red Bull, it's made for Verstappen and no one else. So whether he can get used to that quickly, we'll have to wait and see. Albon struggled, Gasly struggled, Kvyat struggled, but I do think he'll do better than them, and I do think he'll come home 5th in the Drivers' Championship. Moving on to P4, a bit of a shock here. I'm going to go with Lando Norris now. I know I'm a McLaren fan, but I'm not being biased. I do think he had a great campaign last year. Started off on a high, finishing 3rd in Austria. Didn't get any other podiums, but constantly was in the points. The only race he wasn't in the points was Germany and Russia, from what I can remember off the top of my head. So I do think he will finish 4th. I know it's a bit of an out there one, but I do think it'll happen. I think McLaren with the Mercedes is going to be very good. I do think they'll win one race this year, whether that's Ricciardo or Lando, I don't know. But hopefully we see one shock race where the two Mercedes collide and Verstappen has engine issues and Lando or Ricciardo or both of them end up on the podium. But yeah, Lando P4 for me, constantly getting points when it matters, like in the Sakir Grand Prix and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So P4 for Lando. On to the top 3 now, and I'm going to start off with 3rd, Max Verstappen. I don't think he'll win his first championship. I don't think he'll come 2nd. I think Mercedes will be too strong. But I do think he'll finish 3rd easily. I think the moments where you shouldn't go for a dive bomb, he does it. Sometimes it works and you look great. Sometimes it doesn't work, you look stupid. So I think if he can control that a bit better than he has in the last few seasons, he'll be in a chance to win a championship or come 2nd. But for now, I think he'll be staying 3rd. Red Bull, they've got the 2nd fastest car. It's not really near the 1st fastest car. It's not near the 3rd. It's kind of in the middle. So yeah, P3 for Max Verstappen. Right, on to the final 2. I'm going to start with 1st place, and I'm going to say the winner of the World Championship of 2021 will be Valtteri Bottas. I think, knowing that this is probably going to be his last season in a Mercedes car, maybe even in F1, I don't know. I think he's just going to send it. I don't think he'll care whether... I think finishing 2nd is like finishing 20th this season for Valtteri. He's used to it by now. It doesn't really matter. No one remembers you for finishing 2nd. He's going to send it when the teams give him team orders, because like the last few years he's been held back by the team because they're saying let Hamilton pass, blah 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 blah, don't attack Hamilton. I think he's just going to go for it. I really do have a gut feeling that Bottas will win this championship. Now don't get me wrong, I think Hamilton will put up a very good fight. I think Hamilton's best driver on the grid, always consistently in the podium. But I do think Valtteri will just go all out this year, and hopefully we do see Bottas win a World Championship. I think he deserves it. I'm a big fan of Bottas. I'm also a big fan of Lewis Hamilton though, so either or, I think a change to the winner would be nice. I think Hamilton's won it like 5-6 times in a row now, 7 times I don't know. It does get a bit boring seeing the same person win it. He does deserve it, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to see Bottas win it this year, and I'm going to say Bottas. Let me know who you think will finish in the top 4 down below. Mine are a bit out there, but yeah, let me know who yours are. And now we're going to move on to the Constructors' Championship. Starting off P10 in the Constructors' Championship, we're going to go with Haas. I think they're 2 drivers, both of them are rookies. Mazepin we don't like, Schumacher everyone likes, very good driver. I think they'll both get I think Mazepin won't get any points this year, and I think he'll be the only driver to do that. I do think Schumacher will get a couple of points, but I don't see them finishing 9th this year or 8th. I think they're going to flop again. They'll probably do well in they'll do well in Australia if it goes ahead. They seem to do well in the first race and then just goes downhill from there. So I'm going to say P10 for Haas. Yeah, it's not looking too good for them, but 2022, anything can happen. On to P9, we're going to go with Williams. I do think they will make a step up from last year. I don't think it'll be too big, but I do think George Russell and Latifi will both score points this year. I think Williams are always making improvements. Obviously Mercedes engine is really good, so I do think they'll get points. Russell's only getting better, so is Latifi. He's now done as a rookie driver. He's now a proper F1 driver for the past season, so this season he's coming in not as a rookie, and he's got expectations to fill Latifi this year, so I think both of them will get points, and hopefully we see a return to Williams fighting for points consistently and maybe podiums. On to P8, we're going to go at Alfa Romeo. I kind of think of them as the forgotten team. Nobody really talks about them. Kimi Räikkönen, I think, probably will be his last season in F1, unfortunately. Great driver through the years. Has he still got it? Yes, but he's not at his peak and nowhere near it to say. But the car he is in is not very good either. So him and Giovinazzi might struggle in the Alfa Romeo. They both got 4 points this year, but I don't see them doing much more next year. So I'm going to go P8 for Alfa Romeo. On to P7, I'm going to go with AlphaTauri. I do think they have potential to be further up the grid, but at the moment they just don't show signs of improvement. So they started off really well this season. They looked good, but now towards the end of the season it kind of went downhill. In the Imola, Danny Kvyat had a very good race. Sad to see him go from the sport, but I think Gasly and Tsunoda will be a good partnership in 2022 if Gasly stays. I think Tsunoda as a rookie is going to struggle this year, but we'll have to see how that goes. P7 for AlphaTauri. P6, we're going to go with Alpine. I do think they've got a very strong driver lineup in Esteban Ocon and Alonso, but how will Alonso do coming back from 2 years away from the sport? I think that's the biggest question coming up in this season. If he can perform, I think they will make it into the top 5, but if he flops, they'll be staying 6th, maybe even 7th. Ocon is only getting better. I see him having another good season, maybe the odd podium, but I do see Alpine about P11, P12, that kind of area, fighting for points this season, getting them every second week. I think 2022 they'll be very competitive though, so yeah, P6 for Alpine. Moving on to P5, I'm going to go with Aston Martin, formerly Racing Point last season, and before that Force India. As Kimi Räikkönen said. But yeah, I do think Aston Martin will have a good season. Obviously a very, very fast car last year in the Racing Point. It's the same car, just different branding. Yeah, I do see them finishing 5th. Very strong car, strong driver lineup. Depending on if Vettel really thrives in that car or if he flops, that would be the difference between P4 and P6. They could finish anywhere between that depending on Vettel this year. So that's the thing to watch out for. Hopefully delivery is announced in the early stages of February. That's the rumour going around. And yeah, P5 for Aston Martin. Moving on to P4, we are going to go with Ferrari. Finishing P6 this year was not good at all for them, but I do think they'll make improvements. New engine this year, 20 plus horsepower. So hopefully they improve to give Mercedes a bit of a fight in the next few years. Do I see them improving into the top 3? No. But I do think they'll improve into P4. Sainz, very good driver, good addition to the team. Leclerc, obviously very good driver, still young, got a contract to 2024. So yeah, strong. I think it'll be a strong season from Ferrari. I think maybe one race win, a couple of podiums, but nowhere near of what they're capable of in the last decades. So yeah, hopefully Ferrari kind of get better than last year, because it was a bit boring seeing the Mercedes domination. Do I think they'll make front row of the grid now? So yeah, P4 for Ferrari. Moving on to P3, I'm going to go with McLaren. Finished P3 this season, and I think it was deserved. Racing Point were very unlucky, let's be honest. Checo's engine blowing up while he was in podium position in the Bahrain Grand Prix. He had a lot of bad luck. Obviously both drivers getting COVID as well, so I think if it was a normal season for Racing Point, they would have easily gotten 3rd. But F1 never has a normal season. There's always something that'll happen. So yeah, I'm going to say P3 for McLaren. The new Mercedes power unit is only a plus. The Renault one was good, but in the Mercedes one, they could be fighting Red Bull for all we know. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting year, depending on how they adjust to the Mercedes power unit and how Ricciardo adjusts to the McLaren. So hopefully McLaren do well. Yeah, P3 for McLaren. Moving on to P2, I'm going to go with Red Bull. I think it's quite obvious. But it all depends on how Checo does. If he can adjust to that car well, they could be fighting Mercedes. But it's a tough car to adjust to. It's kind of specifically tuned for Verstappen. So depending on Checo, that could be the difference between maybe even McLaren passing them if Checo completely flops. but I don't think he will. I think he'll get used to that quick enough, and I do think it'll be a solid season from Red Bull again, finishing second in the Constructors' Championship. P1 in the Constructors' Championship has to go to Mercedes. Dominated the last 7 years, 7 Constructor Championships in a row, and I do think they'll make it a very strong driver lineup once again. Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton, who will come out on top. I think Bottas. It'll probably be Hamilton, but my gut is saying go Bottas. So yeah, maybe some opening first lap, first corner crashes because Bottas has nothing to lose. We don't know what's going to happen. I do think Mercedes will easily get P1 in the Constructors' Championship to make it 8 in a row, the first time in F1 history. So that's my Constructors' Championship. We'll move on to Driver of the Year and Flop of the Year. Driver of the Year, I'm going to go with Lando Norris. Now, I know I put him P4, you probably think I'm addicted to the bloke. No, I do think McLaren in that Mercedes power unit is going to be very, very good. They could fight Red Bull for all we know. Lando, a great driver as well, consistently getting points. I do think he'll get a couple of podiums this year. Same with Daniel Ricciardo. I think he'll get the odd podium. Depends how quick he adjusts to that car and how quick McLaren adjusts to the Mercedes power unit. But yeah, I see Lando getting Driver of the Year. If not him, Valtteri Bottas, because he'll win the World Championship in my eyes. But yeah, whoever does better this season, I think will get it. Hopefully one of the two get it. Let me know who you think your Driver of the Year will be down below. But that's my Driver of the Year. Let's move on to Flop of the Year, and we're going to start off with Fernando Alonso. Now, this was a tough one because a lot of the drivers nowadays, they're all good. But I do think Alonso will flop because expectations are high. He's been out of the sport for 2 years, but he came back and did the post-season tests in Abu Dhabi and did a faster time than Ricciardo and Ocon. Now, obviously, time of the day, track temperature matters, but like that's only a couple of tenths, so he shows he still has speed. How will he adjust to that Alpine car? We will have to wait and see. I think it'll go well for Alonso, but if anyone is going to flop, it'll be him or Sebastian Vettel. I think Vettel, obviously one of his worst season in F1. He has a lot to make up for next year, possibly going to be his last year. I do think he will perform well in the Aston Martin, but he's either going to perform really well or really bad. So hopefully it's well. Both of them do well. I would say the worst, like Flop of the Year isn't worst driver of the year. I think worst driver will be Mazepin, on track and off track. But flop, I think people will have high expectations and they'll fail. Do I think either of these drivers will fail? Probably not. But yeah, that will be my Flop of the Year for either one of them two. I think more so Alonso because he's been out of the sport. Hopefully both of them do well though. Last but not least, I'm going to go with Race of the Year, and I'm going to go with Bahrain Grand Prix. Now this year it was eventful with Grosjean and Stroll getting flipped and all of that, but I do think Bahrain is always a good race. You're always happy by the end of it. There's some controversy with, let's say, someone locking up and hitting the leader or something like that, so I do think Bahrain will be a good race this year. I do also think Monza will be very close to it, depending on how Mercedes do, because whenever Mercedes aren't dominating in Monza, it's a good race. They're not known for being strong on Monza, but yeah, either one of them two races will be Race of the Year. Worst race will obviously be Sochi or Spain, Barcelona. We'll have to wait and see, but hopefully it's a good season. Hopefully Mercedes don't dominate too much. Maybe a couple different podiums, couple different race winners. But yeah, if you did enjoy the first video on this channel, please leave a like, subscribe, tell me where I can improve down below. Yeah, I'll bring out a new video soon about Aston Martin, their history, what we can expect from them. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Adios.